So first of all, just first and foremost, the way that you have to approach pretty much everything in technical theater is from a perspective of how can I do my job so well that nobody notices that I've done my job. And there's skill that comes into that, whether it is creating a beautiful set, doing lighting like I did, making sure sound mixing works well. All of that has to culminate. But the way to do that well is by knowing the technical ins and outs, which really does come down to academic skills. So for instance, there is so much measurement, there is so much calculation, there is so much planning with ratios and different types of materials that math skills are absolutely a part of it and a necessity. Even with like theatrical rigging, you have to be able to calculate the load that you're putting onto a fly line so that you don't overload the system and possibly cause serious injury. So you are using academic skills that truly have to deal with the safety of the participants that you're working with to actually see your work culminate into something real and tangible. That translates back to all of those academic classes that you do take, because all of those skills really do are important and help you become a better student in it. So it kind of works both ways. You know, it comes from academics into your CTE courses, but then the skills and kind of non-specific academic work that you do transfers back to the academic courses that you are taking simultaneously.
My teacher, my first year teacher for coding, was actually a former math teacher. So he had these habits of integrating math, but it made sense because he was able to translate math and make it work with coding and computer science. Most of it was logic. So when we look at formulas for math, like algebra or geometry, when we're solving for different, we're solving for X, or we're solving for a missing measurement, a lot of that math is actually able to be transferable to a coding skill. Because when we're designing websites and we're creating functions, so different commands for the computer to understand, we have to make sure that the logic is not something that we can understand, but something for the computer to understand. So one example that clearly highlights this is when we created a calculator from scratch. So there was a lot of math, and whenever we had to write the commands, we obviously had to have perfect syntax. So English was a huge aspect that, you know, we had to make sure that we got down, because if we have a misspelling on one of the lines of code, it ruins the whole thing, or it just has a bunch of errors. It won't give us the algebra correctly, so our calculator won't work. So that's why it was very important for us to get not only our English side of it, all the syntax correct, but also the math portion of it as well. Believe that it made me kind of appreciate math and its formulas more, because the instructions are there. It's just, how do we get those instructions for a computer to understand? And that led me to be more motivated to understand math and its formulas. Even though some of them are super complicated, it still encouraged me to keep going and try and learn these formulas of math and be able to integrate them into coding.
So many students have different learning styles. You know, and of course the traditional one is you sit in a classroom and you listen to a lecture, and then you take notes, you do homework, and you take tests. I, you know, found really through the CTE courses in high school that, you know, I'm proud to have always been a good student, but that wasn't my preferred way of learning. I really was more of a hands-on student, where I did best by actually jumping in and trying things and failing and trying again. And so the CTE courses that I took really were kind of catalysts for deciding how I wanted to learn and what I was interested in. I do feel like academics were embedded in the lesson plans, but maybe even not super intentionally. It was the work that was that had to be done to do your role, whether you were in lighting or scenic or whatever, that you were just doing to do what you had to do. And so you were using those skills really even without being direct about it. I think back to my senior year of college. So math actually was not a requirement for my degree. We had science and English and everything else, but not math. But for the grad program that I was looking at going to, they required prerequisite of a math course. And so I took pre-calc, and I hadn't taken pre-calc since high school, since my senior year of high school. And so I was like quite worried. I was like, all right, what have I forgotten in 4 years? But really what I learned is from being a lighting design student in theatrical production in college, I was using those skills and doing math just in my daily work in my designs that I was doing. When I got to the class, I realized that there was a lot more that I knew than I realized and that I thought I would. And it really was because these were the skills that I had been using just not even consciously in the work that I was doing, but applied to the kind of formal in classroom setting. That's what I discovered through it. So yeah, I think that academics are super important and they do play a role in the CTE courses that we do. But the best way for students to learn them is almost to have them not know that they're learning them, to be utilizing the skills and knowing what they need to do, but thinking about it and approaching it in such a different way.
Even though we may not see it, we're still working on with the concepts that we get from academics with our CTE learning. So with CTE, we're embedding everything that we've learned with our formulas and our math, and then it just works together. They go hand in hand. So with what I was using with my regular math and English courses in CTE, I was able to use note taking. So when I went to CTE, when I went to Westmec, I learned a new form of note taking, and I learned different ways of we call it troubleshooting when it comes to computer science and programs and websites, but I used similar concepts and instructions to handle my other academic work. So when I would go through my math class or my English class and I wasn't really understanding the situation, I would first take notes of the situation, describing, okay, so I'm having issue with this math problem. I need to be able to break it down and where am I failing, and that that way of kind of troubleshooting comes from my coding troubleshooting. I would look and see through my lines of code and see, okay, where am I having the trouble? Where's it coming from? And then I would apply that with my math, mainly math, because I'm not the brightest in math. So being able to have this like hands-on trial and error style of learning with coding helped me a lot with my math, bringing it to life and just making it a lot more comprehensible.
So basically, when it comes to like academics, that helps just from high school and beyond, even when it comes to scripts, music, television, everything is written. And so being able to understand that, you were mentioning literacy earlier, being able to interpret it, look for those hidden meanings and how you can really kind of incorporate those things into a show. It's the same way with your own life, especially in a world right now where, I've been working from home for the last 2 years. Everything is written. We do have our video meetings, but the majority of our communications are like over Slack, or we're writing up project plans, or we're doing all of that. And so being able to have all of the academic literacy skills and interpretation skills, and being able to be proactive in your thoughts and your actions in knowing the status of something and what has to happen to push it through. All of those come together into the real world 100%. And so big time, I would say that, it's kind of a domino effect. One thing leads to another, but really the experiences, and again, I'll bring it back to kind of that cross-functional collaboration. I'm a project manager now. So I am working with teams across so many different people in so many different teams, from computer science and programming on our development teams to our product marketing teams. And so being able to speak everyone's language to eventually reach one goal, that was kind of the parallel that I was mentioning with theater, is you're working across all these departments to reach that one goal. So like big time, the experiences and the learnings that I had, even inadvertently from my CT experiences, have definitely helped me kind of find the path that I've taken, and have greatly influenced what I have been able to do now in my professional life.